Okay, I know, I'm super late to this. The film's been out for months. Tons of people have already made tons of great videos of Moana 2. I'm sorry, I know, it's just, I have this weird, crazy principle where I don't pay money to go to theaters to watch movies I don't want to see. Crazy, I know, right? But now, I have watched it, and I have many thoughts that just need to be put out into the world. Mainly that Moana 2, while not being the most boring film to exist, not even the most boring film to come out of Disney, still fails as a movie. That not a single part of the 4 pillars of storytelling functions in the way that it should. Let me explain why.
Hey. It's called a hair whip. Learned it from those guys.
So what exactly do I mean when I say the 4 pillars of storytelling? I'm specifically talking about character, plot, theme, and setting. And I did kind of lie in my opening statement. Moana 2 takes place on the ocean. You got one. Setting. Woo! Ocean. The rest are a complete disaster. But let's get into more specifics. Starting with... For those who don't know, here is an extremely quick plot summary. Moana has been looking for other people on other islands. For some reason, she's been wayfinding alone. She discovers that the reason that she can't find any people is because of this big, special, central island that has been cut off from the world by this god who hates humans. And the island needs a human to step on it to break the curse. Moana puts a crew together, leaves. There's a whole bunch of ocean shenanigans, including coconuts, a giant clam, a bat lady that may or may not be evil. We'll get into it. They find Maui, and they go to the storm, where they crash, get depressed, but after a pep talk, they face the giant storm, and Maui loses his powers. Moana dives down to the island herself, touches it, and immediately dies. Maui and the ancestors sing a actually really emotional song, and Moana comes back to life, and maybe gets demigod status? It's a little unclear. They find more people and bring them back home, and that's the end. Now let's talk about why this sucks. Now, I actually don't hate a lot of the setup that Moana 2 brings to the table. It's true that in the last film, Moana unlocked wayfinding again for her people, but the one thing she never found was other villages. We know that there were voyagers who would settle on other islands, so surely there must be other islands with other villagers on them. The idea of her looking for other people it's pretty good. And that's all the good things I have to say about Moana 2's plot. Firstly, there are many logical inconsistencies sprinkled throughout the film, even in just the first act. Like the lightning strike that gives her the call to action. Lightning is the storm guy's power, so it seems like it comes from him, but it also gives her a vision of the past dude that is helpful to her mission and harmful to the storm dude. Or like, what about the fire in the sky? Where does it come from? How does it work? Why does it blow up? Or like, what about this random continuity error that they just threw in here? They try so fucking hard to convince you that this dude was the last Wayfinder. Except, no, he's not. See, this guy is in the first movie too. We see him throughout the Lin-Manuel Miranda flashback, and a lot of this flashback does point to the idea that he's the last Wayfinder, except, oh, what is that? What is that? Oh, would that be him passing the torch on to his son? This guy? And if you're thinking, well, maybe this guy founded Motunui, and that's why they call him the last Wayfinder, because he was the last one for them specifically, but no. Do you want to know why I know this guy is not the founder of Motunui? Because when he passes the torch on to his son, he also literally gives him this necklace. A necklace that will eventually be passed down to Moana. The only way for this necklace to eventually end up in the hands of Moana is for this guy to be the founder of Motunui and the last Wayfinder. But this guy isn't as recognizable as this guy, so we're just gonna pretend like his son doesn't exist. Inconsistencies aside, that is all obviously incredibly small potatoes in comparison to the biggest issue with this plot. It's a copy of the first one. It's a worse copy, but it's still a copy. You may have already noticed it some in my plot summary, but it's exactly the same structure. Moana discovers some secret about her ancestors' past and gets handed a journey across the ocean because she must take a MacGuffin to MacGuffin Place, but she's afraid of having to leave her home behind because she cares about her people too. She goes anyways because not going would mean the end of her people. She has some trouble sailing, she runs into some coconuts, and eventually she gets sucked into a portal into a monstrous world where Maui's fishhook is. There, she meets a being who sings a song about some belief they have. There's also a lot of bright colors in this number. This being will not reappear in the rest of the movie. The characters get depressed, but after a pep talk, they decide to face the big monster. Except it all goes really poorly and destroys both. Maui loses powers, Moana has some important realization about the twist, and returns the thing to the thing. Maui gets his powers back, happily ever after. It's the same f***ing movie! Except it's also not the same movie. Even though the beats are literally the same, the sequel is missing so many pieces that made the original great. Well, I'm sure those pieces aren't that important. It's just, conflict, stakes, consequences as a result of that conflict. And you might be saying, well, obviously the movie had conflict in it, and yes, I will admit that there is obviously some conflict here, but almost every scene feels remarkably easy for all the characters. Perfect example, the Kakamora. They appear in both movies. In the sequel, they show up and almost immediately capture Moana and group, and then almost immediately afterwards, they all agree to work together. Obviously, the real conflict here is the clam, but even that is very stagnant in comparison to the fight in the original.
Can we shoot that ganglion if we don't know what it looks like?
I think we're gonna know what a ganglion looks like when we see it. Yeah, so I just... and 1, 2, 2, here we go.
Just look here at the camera work and the music and the way the tension builds as they're almost trapped.
Escaping.
The sequel scene has its moments, like Moana using the rope is clever, her facing off against the darts is kinda cool, but it's still very flat and much more anticlimactic than the original. Not to mention how the original scene also adds to character. Moana loses the heart in this scene, and when she asks Maui to help get it back, he instead leaves, forcing her to take action. That sentence alone says so much about Maui and establishes what his arc is going to be, as well as saying a lot about Moana and who she is. And also, the scene ends with Maui getting shot, forcing him to teach her wayfinding. Without something forcing him to, he never would have agreed to help because that's who he is. Selfish. In the sequel, we don't get any of that. The only character stuff I can think of is the fact that she put the crew in holding, which... We'll get into that more when we talk about character arc and theme. The consequences as a result of this scene also don't feel very satisfying. Yes, they get trapped inside the clam, but even then it doesn't feel very consequential. They don't have to work to escape. That lady isn't even actually evil, she just gives some advice and then pieces off. Once again, taking any conflict and throwing it in the garbage. Any challenges they face are not really challenges. They don't struggle, they don't gain any new skills, they don't learn any lessons, and the ones that they do learn don't make any sense. And again, we'll talk about that with theme. In the OG, Moana struggles a lot, both internally and externally. Not only was there things she was having to combat, she was also having to do so while learning wayfinding on the fly. She struggles with that skill and learning, and obviously by the end she becomes a master wayfinder, but it takes time and effort to get there. The only thing I can think of that is kind of similar to something like that is the idea of working together. The team does struggle to come together as one, and in the end they do work together, but that feels like it's missing a middle piece. All we get with the side characters is this one song, and that's That's pretty much it. The rest is Moana once again on her own, so outside of this one scene, they're not really struggling to work together, nor are they learning how to be a team. It's only the start and end of the arc. And so much of the film's conflict is like this, missing that key ingredient of struggle. It's all very still, stagnant, and not as interesting as the first one. Even just looking at the stakes of both films, even though they are literally the same, the new version is extremely lacking. Theoretically, these two scenes are identical. An ancestor tells Moana about the big bad and that everyone's gonna die and sends her on a quest. But in the first film, the stakes are extremely clear and highly specific. They lose the fish and the plants, and eventually the island is choked by darkness. We see the beginnings of it already starting to spread, and in a later scene, we see exactly what it will mean. Again, it is specific, expressly shown, and the stakes are perfectly established. In the second film, the scene is almost exactly the same, but missing that specificity. In the sequel, they stand in an empty village, and he says, "Your story ends." What? But what does that mean? How? How does their story end? Is it magic? Is it a curse? Is it because they don't have enough genetic variation? Tell me, man, what do you mean? Rather than us being clearly shown what is happening, it's confused and muddled and loses the terror. I don't fear Moana losing this time because I don't understand what the stakes are. And despite all these issues, they have the gall to stand around in this movie and continually repeat that this is bigger than last time.
What are you so worried about?
It's not like last time.
Are you kidding? If the film was actually bigger than the first one, you would not need to tell us that. We would be able to see it ourselves. But the fact that you continuously repeat that information while also having the film not feel any bigger or more important just feels like a continuous slap to the face. Not only is the conflict dull in this film, it doesn't result in anything either. The perfect example is Maui's loss of powers. Now, in the original, Maui does also get his powers back at the end, but A, that was kind of annoying in that film too. B, it at least made logical sense because his hook was a gift from the gods, so of course he could get it back from the gods. And C, the cracking hook still had purpose in the first film. It was a part of Maui's arc. It's what makes him leave because he's afraid of losing that crutch. And in the end, when it finally breaks, he still stands up to Taka despite having no powers, showing the completion of his arc. He no longer needs his hook to be Maui. In the sequel, he loses his powers. Nothing happens with him because the focus immediately goes back to Moana dying. Then Moana, for no reason, randomly becomes a demigod. Maui shrugs off the loss of his powers, which I guess is growth, but it's not any more impactful than the first film. And then again, for no reason, he gets his powers back. The ocean just gives it to him. You can't take out Maui cracking his hook from the original. But if you took out Maui losing his demigod status here, then absolutely nothing would change. Everything would be exactly the f***ing same. It doesn't even affect his character or his arc at all. And everything in this movie is like this. In the first movie, everything that happens as a result of the conflict helps to lead Moana on her internal journey. They're dry early. In the first movie, everything that happens as a result of the conflict helps to lead Moana on her internal journey of self-discovery. Everything has a reason to happen, a purpose. But here, we get setup that doesn't pay off, villains that aren't actually villains, sacrifices that don't feel like sacrifices, and nothing happens. Nothing changes. Except there's some more people now. And the movie really emphasizes this fact by having it end with the exact same shot as the first. We don't see growth, we don't see consequences, we don't see an internal journey. How did I do the exact same mistake again? We don't see an internal journey, and Moana does not change. Speaking of Moana's change, let's move on to the next pillar of story. I think it's extremely telling that I can remember a lot of names from the first movie, such as Motunui, Te Tamatoa, Taka, Kakamora. I probably said all those wrong, I'm sorry. But I literally just rewatched the second movie 2 seconds ago as of writing this video, and I cannot tell you the name of any new character. Not the Bat Lady, not the Storm Guy, definitely not any of these fuckers, because they are all so flat. And that really is my general opinion on every single one of these characters. They are all flat. But obviously, a film is made up of many different characters, and each come with its own intricate problems. So, we're gonna have to split this section into smaller sections. Okay, here we go. Look, I really don't want to spend too much time on these chuckle fucks, just like the movie. If you look up any complaints about this movie, the most common one is the side characters. And it's usually the idea that they take up too much of the movie. But I don't think that's necessarily an accurate description of the problem. After all, it's really only one section that they're important in, one song where they do things. Otherwise, for the most part, they are background characters who walk up, do something important, and then leave again. And creating a new character for a sequel movie is not a bad idea. Some of the greatest sequels have new characters in them, characters so iconic, you forget they aren't even in the first film. Adding new things to the second film kinda comes with the territory. So, no, it's not the fact that they have new characters, it's the fact that these characters don't do anything for the story. Like, at all. Every single one is horribly simple and one note, and their arcs, if you could even call them that, are the same. They spend so little time on screen, their arcs really are just, here's the problem, okay, now problem gone. There's no change at all, and not a single one connects to the themes or ideas like other great sequels do. The problem is not that they are in too much of the movie or too little of the movie, it's that as it stands now, they've managed to find the exact worst sweet spot. They're not in enough of the movie to feel important, but they're in so much of the movie that they take away time from other characters that we care about. Currently, they are at their most annoying, just like me. Honestly, they should have been entirely rewritten to fit the film better, or better yet, just cut entirely. I get it. You don't want another movie just about Moana and Maui traveling across the ocean. You don't want another movie traveling across the ocean. You don't want another movie just about Moana and Maui traveling across the ocean, because then it makes it more obvious that it's just the first movie again. But throwing in these guys is not the solution. It does not help your case at all. I've included these two together for reasons that are probably clear to those who have seen the film, and that's because one of these characters is the villain, and the other one should be the villain, but is not. I don't even know if you can really call Storm Guy a villain. He definitely works to try and stop Moana's goal, but he's much more of an antagonistic force than an actual villainous character. He's clocking into his 9 to 5, but he's spending the whole day playing Call of Duty instead of actually getting his spreadsheets done. Go, Storm Guy! Get those spreadsheets done! We need the numbers for the quarter thing! I don't know business terms. I'm a film major. We never learn his motivations. We never even learn how separating all these people helps him exactly. How does this help you get more power? And because he's not a person, we can never have any moral discussions with him. And before you try to compare him to Taka, these two are nothing alike beyond being a natural event personified as a monster. Taka is person-shaped. We see her emote, we see her make decisions. And on top of that, she still is a character, not a very deep one, but we understand her personality, feelings, and emotions behind the things that she does. Storm Guy is literally just that. A guy in a storm. Sometimes a face will show up in it, but you can't really tell any emoting from it. And then they try to tell us that he's making decisions like summoning more tornadoes, sending them after the humans, taking Maui's power away. But we don't see him do these things with any intention. They just tell us that he has it. We have no idea if this guy is even sentient, because we never see him. They talk about Storm Guy as if he's a fully realized person, when he is just not. He's incredibly boring and flat, and even then, that's not an entirely accurate description of him, because he doesn't really show on screen enough to be boring at all. He's just non-existent. But they act like he's this great terror. In reality, the person who should be the villain is Bat Lady. So much personality, such a great vibe, and since she gets to exist on screen, she has fantastic chemistry with Moana. She's not memorable enough for me to remember her name, but she's much better than Storm Guy. Not to mention how, if they played her right, she would be the perfect balance of totally evil villain and sympathetic. With her backstory of her being trapped there, it's a feeling that anyone could understand. You would just have to make her desperate enough to achieve her freedom, and willing to do anything for it. Obviously, in this version, since Storm Guy wouldn't exist, it would have to be something else keeping her trapped, but other than that, it would still work. I'm just so confused why the villain was written the way that he was. You had this perfectly good stuff that you didn't use, and you made a villain who practically doesn't exist in his own movie. And all of this just goes straight back to the lack of conflict. Like, yes, obviously I would say that in these scenes they struggle. It would be kind of ridiculous to say they don't struggle against a storm. But it would have been so much more intense if he was just there. Just like I would be better at my job if I wasn't disassociating all the time. God, where do I even start with this one? Somehow, Maui, despite being one of the most important characters in the film, has, like, nothing happened to him. And that's really saying something, considering the competition he has. In the original film, Maui's arc was extremely clear. It was all about the fact that he tied himself to the idea of Maui instead of just being Maui. But in this film, he already starts by being the best version of himself. And because he already starts at a very stable place, he doesn't have anywhere to go. He's got nowhere to change. I mean, it's not necessarily a terrible thing. There are plenty of characters with neutral character arcs, and they try to treat him instead as this mentor character for Moana, which would explain said neutral arc. But the fact that he changes so much in the first film just makes the fact that he stays the same in the second all the more obvious. It also just makes Maui's sacrifice feel less powerful. This was a big moment for him in the original, and here he just gives up his power just because, and then gets it all back just because. And listen, I don't know if I'm crazy or whatever, but I really thought the whole time that the big twist was going to be that Storm Guy was Maui's dad. Not his real dad, I know he comes from human parents, but the god who found him and gave him his god status.
This is between him and me. Moana, nothing to do with it. 'Cause she'll die. Nalo hates humans, even more than he hates me. And let me tell you something, he hates me a lot. Well, Nalo's a cheater. And a coward for avoiding, you know.
He doesn't care about you.
Oh, he cares about me.
But then there wasn't a twist, and they didn't have that. So I was kind of confused on why they were trying to subtly establish a relationship between the two of them when they didn't even really include the bad guy in the movie. It probably won't surprise you that this is the longest of the character sections. She's our main character, so she's meant to have the biggest and most obvious arc. Now, a character arc, especially a main character's arc, is built upon three things: the want, the need, and the lie. The want is the character's goal at the start of the film. It's very easy to find in every single Disney movie because 9 times out of 10, they end up singing it to you. For example, Moana wants to go out on the water. But it's more than just that for her. She wants to be able to go out on the water while also being a good chief and obedient daughter. The second thing is the lie. This is some belief the characters have about themselves, the world, or their goal. In Moana's case, she is torn between the two worlds of the land and the sea, and feels that she must choose one. That is also why she is willing to go on this quest in the first place, because it's something that takes her out to sea, but must be done to protect her people. It includes both sides of herself. And finally, the need. The question of what is it that your character needs, but doesn't realize they need. Usually this is because their want or their lie is getting in the way of them realizing what it is they actually need. Moana needs to realize that she should be true to yourself and to reconcile the two halves of herself. She can be Moana, both of land and sea. So after explaining all this, the question becomes, what is Moana's want, need, and lie in the second film? Okay, part of it is extremely clear. The want is very obvious. She wants to find people. And in order to find people, she has to land on the special island.
So I will sail to this new sky to reconnect the people of the entire ocean.
That is the goal. Get to MacGuffin Island. Okay. What about the lie? Okay, this is where the movie completely loses me. I think the film wanted the lie to be, you can't do everything on your own.
Moana, you need a crew. Hehe and Pua don't count.
But that's an idea that is barely explored. I can think of maybe 3 moments where they try to bring it up, including when she shoves her panicking crew into the holding instead of asking them for help. But altogether, it's barely anything. She still, for the most part, tries to work with her crew, and when she's not doing that, it's because she's separated doing her own thing on her own. Way to contradict yourself there. Speaking of contradictions, they go along with this idea of you can't do everything on your own for half the film, and then all of a sudden throw in a new idea of get lost, cut loose, be dangerous, which has nothing to do with the other arc. Okay, so now the lie is she thinks that everything will be fine if she sticks to a plan. But Moana has never been very plan-focused. I feel like she always has kind of been the risk-taking type. She sailed halfway across the ocean with no idea how to sail. If I did that, I would panic, cry, probably lose the sail at some point, and then cry more. All this to say, I don't think this is a lesson that she needs to learn. But still, they act like that was the lesson that was learned, that lesson was her need. She needed to get lost, and uses that idea in the third act to kind of Not really. I feel like you're just lying to me that this is getting lost. It's really more so taking a direct path to the island. And they act like this is so clever, but it's just brute forcing it. In the original, Moana's want connected directly with her need. She wants to be on the ocean, but she needs to learn that she's of land and sea. In this movie, the want of finding people does not connect at all to the idea of getting lost, but they act like that's the lesson she learned in the third act. And I suppose that idea does connect a little more to accepting help, but learning to work together is dropped, and thus does not really feel like the need. And then she just becomes a demigod just because. And once again, there are absolutely no consequences to her for anything that happens in this movie. No struggle, and no lesson. If you were to ask me how I would fix all this and let me selfishly get my grimy little writer fingers in there, the only time in this entire movie I ever felt any amount of emotion other than annoyance was Maui losing his god status and Moana gaining god status. I don't know if this was intended for it to be him giving the status to her. I don't think so, because he gets it back, but still, it was something. So personally, I would base everything around that moment. We need a want. Let's keep it the same. Get to Special Island, but with an important emphasis the film mentions and then drops.
So I will sail to this new sky to reconnect the people of the entire ocean. And then I will return home.
She doesn't just want to go there, she wants to go there and come back because she doesn't want to abandon her family or her sister. That is her worst fear. The lie. The lie here lies in the certainty of this statement, that we will do these things. We will go to Special Island and we will come back home. She's expecting everything to go to plan and is confident that she can take whatever comes her way. And obviously in this version we would cut every scene that ties to the idea of accepting help. And probably also just cut the side characters too. This is when we meet Bat Lady, who in my preferred version is also the villain. Despite being at odds, she gets along with Moana. They have good chemistry together, and through her song, she teaches Moana the need. This can be pretty similar, but slightly different. Rather than it being get lost and be dangerous, this song is instead about how there's always things you can't expect that will stop your plan along the way. So you might as well accept the chaos. Again, it's a pretty similar idea, just a little more clarifying and sticking closer to the theme in Moana's established character. Then, the big moment. In my head, in this version, the island doesn't need to be stepped on by a human, but a demigod. Someone with human and god in them. Originally, the plan was that it was going to be Maui, but through some random big sacrifice, he is forced to give up his god status. What is the sacrifice? I don't know, that's not my job. Figure it out. Without a demigod, they can't get to the island. Oh no! It's the chaos that's coming in to wreck your plan! And so Moana chooses, very important word there, chooses to become a demigod, but by doing so, she becomes demigod of the sea or something, and is no longer allowed to step on land. Yes, I stole this from Pirates of the Caribbean. All art is derivative. This is her worst fear realized. A sacrifice that she chooses to make. Some fucking consequences in this goddamn movie. I also think it's extremely important that even though this is something that happens to her, it is still, at the end of the day, a choice. In the first movie, Moana makes a lot of decisions. She puts herself in the way of danger over and over and over again, and she chooses that path. Moana chooses to put herself in the way of danger over and over and over again, giving her agency. In this film, the things that do happen just happen to her. She gets eaten by a clam. She gets thrown around by a bat lady. She dies. She turns into a demigod. It doesn't feel like she's making any decision here. So, we're gonna change that. Oh, and also Maui stays a human and he's stuck like this. Yes, this ending would be sad because she can't see her sister anymore, except it is also bittersweet because if you remember,
nowhere I could ever go that I won't be with you.
Because the ocean is their friend, and they're forever connected, even when apart. If you want to go even further, you could connect this idea to the villain. If the reason she got trapped in the first place is because she made some big sacrifice and she regrets it now, or something. I don't know, look, there's a lot of holes in this and a lot of logic that would need to be figured out. I never said it was going to be perfect, or that I would fix the whole movie, just Moana's arc. And there you go. Things always change, not everything goes to plan, you must accept the chaos and move forward with it. She wants to go to Special Island and come back home. In fact, she is certain that that is what will happen, but needs to realize not everything goes to plan and sometimes you must sacrifice for the greater good. Honestly, in making this up, I used a lot of the pieces that were already there in the movie. It was like almost a character arc. It was just missing that key ingredient of loss. And yeah, Moana loses her life, but not really. It's not consequential enough for me to really count this. Plus, there's the fact that this is also muddled with other ideas. Speaking of... the thing about plot, character, and theme is that it's all connected together. If you don't have your characters struggle in the plot, they're not going to have good arcs. If your characters don't have good arcs and don't learn anything, then there can't be a theme you could pull out of it. And, you know, the setting is the ocean. All this to say is that because the character arcs in this film are poor, I have no idea what the theme of this movie is supposed to even be. I think it's something about togetherness, right? Like Moana thinks she can do it all herself and doesn't trust the crew, but then the crew needs to learn to work together and they're only able to get to the island by working together with Maui. Except Moana does it by herself. And also the fact that the island is supposed to be this place that brings people together? That is my best guess, but I can't even be certain if that's right, because there's also this thing about getting lost thrown in here. It doesn't make any sense! Moana 1 actually does a fantastic job with theme. Everything in the movie works towards the idea of being true to yourself. We already talked about Moana's arc. Maui's arc involves him creating this image of himself using the voices of others rather than the voice of himself, thinking that he can't be Maui without his hook. But by the end, he learns to let go of that crutch, trusting in himself. With Taka, everyone believes her to be giant lava monster, only seeing surface level. But Moana, who has learned to be true to herself, realizes that she's not who she is, and she's actually Te Fiti. Hell, even the fucking crab connects to everything. He doesn't believe in being true to yourself, he believes in outward appearance. This also makes him the perfect parallel to Maui, someone who also relies on outward appearance rather than listening to his inner voice. Theme? Be who you are. But Moana 2 is a mess, and I cannot pick a theme out of a mess. Is the theme get lost? Is it togetherness? Because those two lessons don't connect to each other. If I had to point to a reason as to why this is, I would blame the change. For those who don't know, Moana 2 was originally meant to be a series, but it was suddenly decided that it would actually be a movie. I believe that this is why it's such a jumbled mess, because the structure is all sorts of wrong. Believe it or not, films are not TV. Films have one big arc throughout the whole thing. TV has individual episodes that each have their own arc in them, while also having one big overarching theme. Example, Owl House. This episode, the theme is, don't believe you're special. But the overarching theme is all about growing up, the challenges life throws at you, how you must learn to trust in yourself and continue to trust in yourself despite those challenges. In this movie, there are some things that could be considered a theme. You can't do it all yourself, you have to work with others, you gotta play it safe, you gotta be dangerous, you can't play it safe, you gotta be dangerous again. But these lessons are brought up, explored, learned, and then moved on from, because it's an episode, and not a movie. I think this is why I can't, for the life of me, figure out what the theme in this movie is supposed to be, because there are so many arcs and themes being thrown around and then immediately cut short. I can't tell what to focus on, and I have no idea what the overarching theme was supposed to be. rather than everything being connected and coming together in a beautiful symphony, the movie is once again just confused. The thing is, this movie is not unfixable. There are some massive changes you'd have to make, basically the entire script, but the foundation is there. The ideas they have are good, and it's disappointing that they didn't follow up on those ideas. But is it though? I'm sitting here writing this script as the credits for Moana 2 roll for my third watch of this unfortunate movie, and I'm just wondering, why do I care? I mean, I like the first Moana, I think it's good. It has several moments of depth and emotion, it even makes me tear up a little bit. But it's not my favorite Disney movie. I don't even love it. So why am I doing this? Why have I sat here, curled up in my closet, with my knees cramping, for this long, ranting and complaining about a children's movie? Complaints that will just be lobbed onto an endless pile of videos of adults making probably the same complaints about the same children's movie. And I'm not even doing this when it's topical, 'cause I'm months late! And as I sit here, watching the credits scroll by, I wonder... Wait a second, why is there a skip credits button?
A human
Should never have been able to reach me.
Oh my God. Oh my fucking God. There's an after credit scene. In this scene, we do actually see Bat Lady again, and she's still trapped for some reason, and we finally actually see the villain. Although we don't get any explanation on him, he pretty much just stands there and goes, "Fine, I'll do it myself." He's even purple like Thanos. All of this seemingly important information was hidden in an after-credits scene, one that I didn't even catch on my first watch, and other people probably missed as well. And now that I've seen it, it hits me. This whole movie is set up. That's why it's the way it is. That's why the conflict feels too little and the characters don't change and everything feels really still, because everything they've done here isn't a movie. It's all just set up for another movie. Let's face it, they are going to make a Moana 3. They have to. This movie made stupid amounts of money, and they have the setup. It's not bad setup either. Exploring the relationships of the gods makes sense considering Moana's new status, but in all likelihood, they'll just copy Moana 2 again, but worse. On top of that, there's also been talks of a Moana remake. Once again, the same plot, but in all likelihood, worse. Now, I don't know for certain that the movies are gonna be like that, but if the series does continue the way it has, with the way these movies are going, it weirdly kind of makes me think of AI. Let me be clear here, I don't think that Moana 2 was written by AI. This situation just makes me think of the way AI behaves. After all, AI cannot come up with original ideas. It cannot write things based on its own experiences because it has no experiences because it's not human. All it can do is copy, but even those copies are done extremely poorly and not consistently. They're never exact, as the pieces of it are cut up and mixed with copies of other things. With this picture, an AI was told to make an exact copy 100 times, and not only could it not keep it consistent for 100 times, it couldn't even do it once, already warping the image beyond repair, changing it into the most uncanny imitation, feeding the next iteration incorrect information as it slowly distorts itself away, shaving off all it was originally. Moana 2 is not an exact copy of Moana 1. The plot is very similar, the pieces are all there, but there are things that are different. Sometimes it's even a good different. And sometimes it's not. And I fear that instead of using this setup to put these characters in new situations, the next Moana movie is just going to be a poor copy of Moana 2, forcing the newest film to eat the previous's plot over and over and over again, slowly rotting away until it is horrifically unrecognizable, yet still trapped in the same form, ripping holes out of Moana's script and still attempting to scan it for the next one they try to pump out. But if you put too many holes in a wall, it will not stand, even if your design is based on the world's strongest skyscraper. How long must we sit as executives attempt to sell you dead horses and sticks? I wouldn't buy if other options were still available, but all the horses still living were slaughtered by those who have never even picked up a pen and deemed doing so beneath them. For why should I pick up something so heavy when the machine lifts it for me? I'd rather let those muscles atrophy, for it is much easier than punishing myself for the sake of words. Words that, if perceived incorrectly, will seek to do me more harm. Why should I try if the people, after all, cannot tell the difference between the finest venison in the world and the ground-up horse we found on the ground? So I will force-feed the people their contaminated entertainment, and they will learn to love it, for they know nothing else. And I think I've been listening to too much of the Magnus Archives! I'm sorry, I don't know where that came from. But Crazy Me does make a few points. I think that that's why I care. Because I love animation. I think it has the most freedom and potential for stylization, but if films are trapped in the same art style with the exact same plot, we won't get any of that stylization, and people will just write it off because of the stigma that animation is for kids. I don't want to watch the same movie regurgitated 1,000 times, each one worse than the last. I don't want kids to watch the same movie regurgitated 1,000 times, each one worse than the last. I want to watch Into the Spider-Verse, Boy and the Heron, Summon of the Gods, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and yeah, Moana can be included on that list. But just Moana. Not Moana again. Or 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 Moana again.